Please bow our head and put ourselves in the presence of the Lord. Dear God, we offer everything to you during this seminar. May we ask for your blessing and divine providence that the activities set for this undertaking be successful and effective. May we also retain the invaluable knowledge and learning experiences that we derive from this activity. We pray that you bless all the committee in charge, that they fulfill tasks responsibly, that the objectives they have set may all be achieved. Your generous as blessing would mean success of this seminar. We know that without it we can do nothing. Maybe believing witnesses of your genuine love through the implementation of the knowledge acquired through this activity. Grant us your divine wisdom as we about our daily tasks after this seminar. This we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our free webinar on transfer pricing and tax treaties. Today is June 29, 2021, and this is the second to the last webinar that we have for the month of June, no? Because we have our last seminar tomorrow on international taxation also and transfer pricing. Okay, so I would like to call on our participants who have signed in already, no? So we have Abad Annabel Molanda, perfect attendance to, no? Si Aglim Shekinah Grace. Antonio Claire Justin May from Novaliches, Quezon City. Barahan Erica from Commonwealth, Quezon City. Belen Lizelle, Barangay Tapia, General Trias, Cavite. Burais Christine May, Dagupan City, Pangasinan. Caballero Ruela Evangelio, Santo Tomas, La Union. Kakayan Christian Brian, kasama pa siya natin sa live streaming kagabi, no? San Carlos City, Pangasinan. Cantor Carl Joseph, San Jose del Monte, Bulacan. Kapwa May Jane, Dagupan City. Castañeda Abigail, San Jose del Monte, Bulacan. Cruz Jasmine, Batasan, Quezon City. Cruz Jedaya, Lingayen, Pangasinan. Damasco Jennifer, Dagupan City. De La Cruz Red, San Luis, Antipolo City. Jocadis Ryan, Pavia, Iloilo. Ito, perfect attendance din to si Jocadis Ryan. Diretso Adrian Lee, Lagro, Greater Lagro, Quezon City. Doroy Mary Jane, Makati. Escobar Alea Cassandra, Commonwealth, Quezon City. Ferrer K. Ann, Poblacion, Santo Oeste. Frias Erica, Basista, Pangasinan. Ito parang ano din to, no? Perfect attendance. Jelly J.R., San Jose del Monte, Bulacan. Hoson Richel, si Richel. San Jose del Monte, Hoson Richel, Istandang Sora, Quezon City. Honyo Pauline Joy, Bayambang, Pangasinan. Lalas Angel Rhea, Mangaldan, Pangasinan. Layao, Leonel, Tabuk City, Kalinga. Lonon Bernadette, Cagayan de Oro City, palagi dito sa ating live streaming. No, invite ko rin po kayo, meron tayong live streaming every Monday and Wednesday, transfer pricing po 8 to 10 in the evening. Pagka naman Tuesday and Thursday, meron po tayong live streaming 8 to 10 pa rin yung tax training, no? Tama ba sinabi ko, Are? No, basic transfer pricing yung Monday and Wednesday. Okay. So Magnay Eugenia Garing from Quezon Province, no, Candelaria. Magnay Merdel, San Jose, Batangas. Mejia Rezan Joy, Mapandan, Pangasinan. Uchavi Kathleen Grace, Baguio City. Olympia Linde, Aguilar, Pangasinan. Ong Angela, Lasip Grande, Dagupan City. Pahadora Mariela, Orbistondo, Pangasinan. Rada Maria Florenza, Ginubatan, Albay. Ramos Monica, San Carlos City, Pangasinan. Rodas Pamela Jane, Dagupan City. Rosario Hana Lorraine, Binmali, Pangasinan. Sagudang Carmina Jane, Novaliches, Quezon City. Saldo Rayson, Batasan Hills, Quezon City. Salisa Arlene, San Jose del Monte, Bulacan. We have Salvamante Genebeth, Sampaloc, Manila. Santueco Carlo Magno, Canumay, Valenzuela City. Ito, parang perfect din to siya. Professor pala siya sa UE. No? University of Makati. Sigera Joy, Fairview, Quezon City. Sobarjaga Chuchi, Cagayan de Oro. Tagawa Cristina, Rosario, Cavite. Veloria Mary Ann, San Fabian, Pangasinan. Vidal Alejandro, Dagupan City. Villa Kaila, Balispin, Quezon City. Yao, ay si Ma'am Lilian Yao, bilib ako dito. No? Marunong na, pero aral pa rin ng aral. Giovanni, pakipatay mo muna yung langaw. Iistorbo. Vidal Alejandro de la Cruz, Dagupan City, Pangasinan. Villa Kaila, Balispen, Quezon City. Tapos na to si Ma'am Lilian. Tondo, Manila. Salom Esperanza, Bautista Gladys, Cansejo Shane, Galletes Ayesa, Bonlang Jonalen, Di Guzman Fem, Nebres Alaisa, Kendara Raisa May, Veluser Nadine, Bustamante RG. Ala, si Ma'am RG nandyan din. Graduate na to ng ating certificate program in transfer pricing. Ha? May haabol pa. Ang dami pang haabol Gascon, Norwayne, Puntawi Russell Jan, RC Joshua, Bugarin Micah May, Corrado Shermaine, Benshur Raisa, Alcantara Jenny, Principe Julian, si Ma'am Julian. Flores Joyce, Di Guzman, Kathleen Joy, Manadis Maylin, Umamoy Mileris, Patungan Joyce, Milian Renz, Lowy, Zamora Jesse. No? So, ilan lahat yung ating participants? 60 plus. Okay. So, let's now go to our free webinar on transfer pricing and tax treaties. And our topics today, we have 3 topics, no? Kasi very limited lang yung 2 oras. As usual, naka-anchor yung ating seminar on transfer pricing. And when we say transfer pricing, of course, the application of the arm's length principle. And then, since nandito yung tax treaties, so we have to know saan ba nanggaling at saka ano itong consensus ng mga nations or mga bansa about this tax treaty, no? So, we have the Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties. Pero, since nangasabi ko, very limited lang po yung ating time, try to read this Vienna Convention on the Law of Tax Treaties. Of treaties lang pala, hindi tax treaties, no? On the Law of Treaties. Kasi, nandyan yan sa internet natin, may kopya dyan. You can read kasi ang dami ninyo matutunan, no? And we have the tax treaties of the OECD model on income and capital. Ito yung parang model template ng mga tax treaties concluded between countries. Ito yung pinaka-guide, no? Yung OECD model. And then we have as a sample, ito yung RPUS na tax treaty, pero hindi natin tatapusin because napakahaba, no? So since our topic is transfer pricing and tax treaties, and the duration is 2 hours, please expect only overview of the subject matter. If you want to go deeper, then it's up to you to expand. And anyway, meron tayong mga nakaschedule up to November na mga transfer pricing update seminar. It's 2 days, no? Monthly. So, pwede rin po kayong mag-attend dyan kasi mga updates yan. At saka yung mga hindi natin na-tackle on our seminars itong June, kung ano man yung mga bago about transfer pricing, and if we can discuss also about cases, then we will do so during the transfer pricing updates, no? Shout out, Hari. Marami na ba?
Marami na po.
Oh, sige. Kasi we have a very limited time. So, anong gagawin natin? We'll just do lectures during the time allotted to us up to 4 o'clock. And if some participant have questions or clarification, you can do so. And we will answer your questions and clarification after 4 o'clock, no? Those who wanted to stay, you will stay if you still have some questions. Pero yung mga wala nang clarification or questions, then hanggang 4 o'clock lang po tayo. And so that ma-confirm yung inyong attendance and you will be given a certificate of attendance, you have to answer our poll questions that we will give you during the webinar. And then you have to answer also the evaluation form, no? It's a very short evaluation. Okay? So let's go with our topic proper. So we'll start with transfer pricing. Since if you try to look at our topics, naka-anchor lahat sa transfer pricing. Why? Because all these topics, nire-relate natin lahat sa transfer pricing. Because sabi na nga natin, transfer pricing is the most important topic in the international arena today. No? Bakit na most important siya? Kasi ito yung pinaghahandaan ng lahat. Just like the documentation. So everybody is concerned about the documentation in order to comply with the requirement of the transfer pricing, which is the arm's length principle. No? So what is transfer pricing? It is defined as the pricing of cross-border intra-firm transactions between related parties or associated enterprise. So sabi ng iba, ma'am, transfer pricing deals only with cross-border transactions. No, it's not. No, this is quoted from the Revenue Regulations to the 2013 na transfer pricing guidelines natin. And also, the transfer price occurs between taxpayer of a country with high income taxes and a related or associated enterprise of a country with low income taxes. So, bakit ganon? May low income taxes at saka may high income taxes kasi it's part of the tax planning nila, no? Bukas, our topic would be about international taxation and we will deal a little about tax planning, no? So it's part of the tax planning of these companies with related party transactions na they make complicated structures and then they establish offices and subsidiaries or branches or permanent establishments in some countries, and the payment of taxes in low tax jurisdiction, doon binabayad, and in high tax jurisdiction, doon yung mga expenses, no? Para maliit lang yung income. Okay. So in Section 1C of Revenue Regulations to the 2013, which is the transfer pricing guidelines, kaya nilagay ko dito because nung nakaraan, we have some questions about transfer pricing na applicable lang daw sa cross-border taxation. No? So these are the wordings of these Revenue Regulations to the 2013 that cross-border transactions between associated enterprises and domestic transactions between associated enterprises are covered with this revenue regulations to the 2013 or the transfer pricing guidelines. And of course, ano ba yung transfer pricing law natin dito sa Pilipinas? It is the Section 50 of the National Internal Revenue Code. Pakiabot mo nga yung Internal Revenue Code natin, Hari. Yun. Okay. So, our Section 50 of the National Internal Revenue Code, which is the transfer pricing law in the Philippines, no? And also same with Section 482 of the Internal Revenue Code, no? Of the US. So ito po, this is our National Internal Revenue Code, and this is Section 50, no? So ano yung Section 50 natin? Ano sabi niya? Is the allocation of income and expenses, allocation of income and deductions. Pakilagay mo nga para hindi mahulog. Dito siguro sa ilalim. Yun. Kasi papakita ko sa kanila all the while. Yan ang topics natin eh. Okay. So, Section 50 po, allocation of income and deductions sa ating National Internal Revenue Code, which is the transfer pricing law here in the Philippines. No? So, anong sabi dito? The allocation of income and deductions. Why allocate income and deductions? Because when you increase your income, lalaki yung babayaran mo. But if you decrease your income, of course, delete yung babayaran mo na tax. Ganon din sa deductions. When you increase your deductions, liliit ang net income mo, liliit yung tax mo. When you decrease your deductions, lalaki yung net income mo, lalaki yung babayaran mo. No? So in the case of two or more organizations, trades, or businesses, whether or not incorporated, and whether or not organized in the Philippines, whether or not organized in the Philippines, so pwedeng sa ibang bansa na organized, owned or controlled directly or indirectly by the same interest, the commissioner, ito na yung power of the commissioner, no? The commissioner is authorized to distribute, apportion, or allocate gross income or deductions between or among such organization, trade, or business. Why? If he determines that such distribution, apportionment, or allocation, so tatlo yung pwede niyang gawin na distribution, apportionment, or allocation. So pwede niya i-distribute, pwede niyang i-apportion, so i-divide niya, or i-allocate. Is necessary in order to prevent evasion of taxes. So, anong purpose pala? Evasion, to prevent evasion of taxes. Or clearly to reflect the income of any such organization's trade or business. Or to reflect the income, hanapin yung totoong income ng organization's trade or businesses. No? So this Section 50 is a very, very powerful statement. Same with Section 482, the transfer pricing law of the United States. If you try to join us in our live streaming every Monday and Wednesday, ngayon tinututukan namin because ang gaganda ng mga transfer pricing law sa US, no? So, yun yung tinututukan namin na i-discuss sa inyo so that malalaman natin yung mga scheme na ginagamit sa transfer pricing and how the tax authority or the court decide when the case is already reaches the court. No? Okay. So, dun sa Section 50, walang sinasabi dito na doon na cross-border lang or domestic transactions, no? So, sinabi niya whether organized in the Philippines or hindi, no? Kasama siya doon sa Section 50. Okay. And very important in the study of transfer pricing is the arm's length principle and its application. No? And saan po nanggaling yung ating arm's length principle? Sa OECD Convention, which is paragraph 1 of Article 9. Ito po yung ating Model Tax Convention on Income and Capital. And since tax treaty yung pag-uusapan natin, ang laman nito, no? Although, kung talagang may time kayo, you download this, ha? This is Model Tax Convention on Income and on Capital. Ito yung 2014 na edition. May mga commentaries po dito about yung permanent establishment, about business income. Ang dami nyo pang matutunan. You can expound your knowledge pagka binasa nyo po ito. No? This is available naman on a PDF form sa internet. Samantala ako, binili ko pa to. And that cost me 40,000. No? Okay. So, Article 9 of the Arm's Length Principle, anong sabi dito? And this is a very powerful statement. Where conditions are made or imposed between the two associated enterprises in their commercial or financial relations which differ from those which would be made between independent enterprises sa kanilang financial and commercial relations, ha? And then, ano sabi? Mag-iiba siya doon sa ginagawa ng independent enterprises. Then, any profits which would, but for those conditions have accrued to one of the enterprises, pero yung kanyang profits nilagay doon sa isang enterprise. But by reason of those conditions have not so accrued, may be included in the profits of that enterprise and taxed accordingly. Bakit? Kasi dinala ang profit sa ibang enterprise. Why? Kasi yung ibang enterprise nandun sa tax haven countries, very low yung tax rate ng income tax, so doon babayaran, doon i-report para maliit lang yung babayaran na tax. Sa high tax jurisdiction, ano i-report doon? Puro expenses, puro losses, no? That's why the tax authority subjected such kind of entity or company into tax transfer pricing audit, no? So, since we're talking of tax treaties, how these tax treaties affect the business enterprise and how do this enterprise deal with each other with different countries in also enjoying the benefits of the tax treaties, no? In order to avail of the benefits of tax treaties here in the Philippines, you have to apply for application for treaty benefits, no? At saan mo yan i-apply? Sa National Office ng BIR dito po sa Agham Road, no? Dito malapit lang po sa amin sa Agham Road, no? Sa BIR National Office Building. Nandiyan po yung International Tax Affairs Division. Diyan po natin lagay yung ating application po sa tax treaty, no? Tax treaty benefits. Okay. Although there was a time that during the time of Commissioner Hinares, ginawa niya, mayroong memorandum na nilabas na if you don't apply for a tax treaty benefits before the happening of the events or before the transactions, hindi ka na entitled sa tax treaty, no? So, yung ibang mga bansa nag-react. Why? Kasi bakit sabi nila yung treaty is higher than any domestic law. Bakit gagawa lang ng regulations na hindi ka na maka-avail ng treaty benefits kung hindi ka mag-apply before the transactions? Kasi sabi nila, ang treaty, nandyan na yan, and the benefits na pwede mong ma-avail, nandyan na yan, provided na ng tax treaty. Bakit babaguhin pa? Because of the regulations, no? Kaya ngayon, ang ginagawa, procedural. So, you have to apply for tax treaty to see to it that you are really compliant with the requirements of the treaty, no? Kasi may mga procedural requirements din yan, or in order that you have to show proof also that you are entitled to that benefits. In relation with this treaty, we have what we call as the pacta sunt servanda rule in the international political law, no? So this is known by the Latin formula pacta sunt servanda, or Ano ibig sabihin ng pacta sunt servanda? Agreement must be kept. No? Kasi yung treaty, agreement yan between countries. No? So, once na meron na kayong ginawa na agreement, ito yung parang sa as a person tayo, yung sinasabi na promises are made to be broken. Hindi naman, no? Because promises are made to be kept. No? Parang ganito din sa agreement. Once na nakipag-argue na kayo, nakipag-agree na kayo, don't argue later on na hindi pala tutuparin, no? So, agreement must be kept is arguably the oldest principle of international law. Without such a rule, no international agreement would be binding or enforceable. Kasi, pagkatapos mong makipag-agree, tapos ayaw mo na naman, so how can that be binding, no, or enforceable? Ang daming mo peperwisyo. So the Pacta Sunt Servanda rule embodies an elementary and universally agreed principle fundamental to all legal systems. Sa atin kasi, sa civil law natin, meron tayong what we call as obligations and contract. So once na pumasok ka na sa isang agreement, may obligasyon ka na. No? And that can be enforced. No? Mag-create yan ng cause of action, magkukos na yan ng pwede ka na indemanda nung kausap mo pag hindi ka tumupad, especially if naperwisyo. So ito naman, sa international law naman, halimbawa sa mga treaties, you have to keep also your promises or your agreement. So although it's good faith, element runs through many aspects of international law, and the legal effect of certain unilateral statement rests on good faith. So good faith talaga, kahit naman sa pang-araw-araw natin na buhay, no? Good faith talaga yung kumbaga sa ano, doon tayo nakasandal, no? Sa good faith. It is of prime importance for the stability of treaty relations. Kahit napakasimple lang na relationship, no? Kahit sa opisina, kahit sa pamilya, no? Good faith is really very, very important, no? So, much more so in treaty relations and also relations between nations. The oft-quoted Latin phrase means no more than the agreements which are legally binding must be performed. No? So, ganun talaga. Pagka nakipag-agree ka, you have to perform what has been agreed upon. So, yun yung treaty. Kaya nga, ang tax treaty natin is between two countries lang, no? Hindi tayo nakikipag-treaties na Philippines and Japan and Australia. Hindi ganon. Dalawa lang. Philippines and Japan, Philippines and Australia. Why? Kasi pag maraming agreement, iba yung sinasabi na isa, iba yung sinasabi na isa, then how can you comply with the agreement, no? Especially kung conflicting yung agreements. So, hindi pwede. Kaya between two countries lang. So, Article 2 of the Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties, ito yung mga terms, no? Parang nagbigay siya ng mga definition ng terms. And why is it that the definition of terms are very important? Because pag may mga questions about the treaties, ito po yung bibisitahin kaagad or titingnan kaagad yung definition, no? So since we're talking about transfer pricing and treaties, tax treaties, no? Then, ano bang ibig sabihin ng treaty? Treaty means an international agreement concluded between states, no? So, bansa at bansa ang nag-agree dito. Kasi sinabi mong treaty. Ito yung agreement ng mga bansa, no? Ng dalawang bansa. Between states in written form, no? In written form, and governed by international law, no? So, whether embodied in a single instrument or in two or more related instruments, and whether it's particular designation. Kaya anong designation dito? Sa mga tax treaties natin, double tax agreement, no? Kaya ang ano niya is tax treaty, no? Tax treaty between the Philippines and another country. What do you mean by ratification? It's the acceptance, approval, and accession means in its case, the international act so named whereby a state establishes on the international plane its consent to be bound by a treaty. So, ibig sabihin na ratify mo, in-accept mo, no? And ratification has a process. Minsan dadaan pa yan sa lower sa Congress, sa lower house, and then sa Senate, no? Para i-ratify especially tax treaties. Full powers means a document emanating from the competent authority of a state, designating a person or persons to represent the state for negotiating, adopting, or authenticating the text of a treaty, for expressing the consent of the state to be bound by a treaty or for accomplishing any other act with respect to a treaty. Imagine that, ha? Kaya dapat authorized talaga yung delegate, no? To conclude treaty with another countries. Why? Kasi i-bind mo yung bansa mo, no? Sa treaty. That's why kailangan manggagaling yan sa tao na with full authority to conclude treaty with other countries. Kaya full powers dapat. Kaya hindi ito basta-basta kung sino lang yung pwedeng pipirma sa ating tax treaties. Usually, sinong pumipirma sa tax treaties natin? Kasi tax yan, no? So, usually yung ating finance, no? Head ng finance natin. Or, yung mga designated na team, no? To have tax treaties, no? To negotiate for a tax treaty. Reservation means a unilateral statement, however phrased or named, made by a state when signing, ratifying, accepting, approving, or acceding to a treaty whereby it purports to exclude or to modify the legal effect of certain provisions of the treaty in their application to that state. So may reservation sila as to a certain provision po ng treaty. No? Negotiating state means a state which took part in the drawing up and adoption of the text of the treaty. So kung halimbawa tayo yung nagda-draft ng treaty natin with a certain country, kasi right now, the Philippines has tax treaty with 43 countries. No? Imagine 100 plus. O ilan na ang country ngayon? May 200 na. So 43 pa lang. So napakarami pa nating mga bansa na wala pa tayong tax treaties. No? So negotiating state. State which took part in the drawing and adoption of the text of the treaty. No? Contracting state means a state which has consented to be bound by the treaty. So itong sa letter E, negotiating pa lang, nag-negotiate pa lang. Sa F, contracting state na. So tapos na. No? Nag-consent na siya or bound na siya ng treaty. Whether or not the treaty has entered into force, party means a state which has consented to be bound by the treaty and for which the treaty is enforced. No? So pagka-contracting state ka, you are a party na ngayon doon sa provision ng treaty. Third state means a state not a party to the treaty. So yung third state, hindi siya kasama sa treaty. No? International organization means intergovernmental organization. No? Kasi treaty ang pinag-usapan dito, no? So state, agreement between state. Provision of paragraph 1 regarding the use of the terms in the present convention are without prejudice to the use of the terms or to the meaning which may be given to them in the internal law of the state. Anong ibig sabihin ng internal law of the state? Ito yung domestic law or legislation ng isang bansa. That's why, pag tiningtingnan ninyo yung ating mga tax treaties, may mga definition of terms din sila na nakalagay dyan, no? Sa bawat tax treaties na ginagawa. So this Vienna Convention applies to any treaty which is the constituent instrument of international organization and to any treaty adopted within an international organization without prejudice to any relevant rules of the organization. So, sa Article 6 po ng Vienna Convention, it was explained there or parang may provision, it was provided the capacity of the state to conclude treaties, no? So, anong sabi niya? Every state possesses capacity to conclude treaties. Siyempre, state yan. Kaya may capacity talaga siya to conclude treaties. But, it should be with the full powers, no, as delegated to the officers or kung sino man yung delegates niya. Full powers is a person is considered as representing a state for the purpose of adopting or authenticating the text of a treaty or for the purpose of expressing the consent of the state to be bound by a treaty, if he produces appropriate full powers. Kasi ang hirap din makipag-negotiate ka sa isang team o isang tao na hindi naman pala authorized, no? And then later on, mako-question. So, nakakahiya sa ibang mga kausap na bansa. So, it appears from the practice of the states concerned or from other circumstances that their intention was to consider that person as representing the state for such purposes and to dispense with full powers. No? Kaya usually yung mga delegates, may ano na yan may team na talaga yan at saka represented na sila, may authority. No? Especially kung mga delegation sa government, may ano pa yan sa Malacanang. No? May ano bang tawag doon? May letter. No? So, in virtue of their functions and without having to produce full powers, the following are considered as representing the state. So, ito naman, kahit wala siyang letter na giving him full powers, talagang considered talaga siya na representing the state. Sino naman yun? Head of state, siyempre. Presidente yun eh. Heads of government and ministers for foreign affairs, no? So, yung sa Department of Foreign Affairs. Hindi na kailangan na may authority siya, no? So, for the purpose of performing all acts relating to the conclusion of the treaty. So, yung presidente ng Pilipinas, yung minister or foreign affairs, no? Yung head. Heads of diplomatic missions for the purpose of adopting the text of a treaty between the accrediting state and the state to which they are accredited. Kaya alam nyo, nagpunta kami sa Japan, naka-red passport kami. Bakit? Kasi diplomatic pala yun. Diplomatic visa yung binibigay sa inyo because you are representing the Philippines, no? Pero yung sa amin study lang, hindi naman yun concluding ng treaty, no? So representatives accredited by states to an international conference or to an international organization or one of its organs for the purpose of adopting the text of a treaty in that conference, organization, or organ. Pag siyempre, ikaw yung representative ng states, accredited ka, then ikaw na din yung mag-present. That's why sa mga gathering, sa mga conventions, kung sino yung mga head ng agency, usually sila na yung pinapadala, no? Kasi mas well-equipped sila with the information na, halimbawa, alam nyo, pagdating sa ibang bansa, ang dami ding mga information na kailangan nila, no? So, kung hindi ka talaga belong to the agency, dapat talagang from the agency ka para alam mo yung mga information at pag tinanong ka, yung mga data, may naibibigay ka, no? Okay. So much about the Vienna Convention on Treaties. If you want to expound more about the Vienna Convention, binigay ko lang yun sa inyo so that you have the idea na ito pala yung making ng treaties, no? At saka may mga tao lang na binibigyan ng authority or powers and hindi lahat can conclude treaties with other countries, no? That is in relation with the tax treaties, no? Okay. Now let's go to the, may poll ba tayo, Hari? Okay, sige. Send mo muna, no? So before we go to the next topic, please answer our poll question. Okay, so our poll question, number 1 is, transfer pricing is a very important topic in the international tax arena today. So letter A, adoption of the arm's length principle is required in almost every transaction. Almost every transaction. So lahat ba? There are still difficulties encountered by many countries in adopting the arm's length principle. Okay, so our poll question, number 1. C, taxpayers' compliance are relatively poor because of its complicity. Tama ba? Related party transactions are affected by transfer pricing, but it has no impact as to independent parties' transactions. There are still difficulties encountered by many countries. Okay, so just give your opinion. Okay.
Majority, ma'am, letter A yung sagot.
Mhm. Okay, so majority,
Letter A.
letter A. Okay. Anyway, that is an opinion, no? Okay. Pero yung balikan natin yung ating ah, lesson in the arm's length principle, or the transfer pricing, there is only transfer pricing if there is related party transactions. But since, based on the study, almost 90% of the international trade today are done through related parties. So, marami pa rin talaga ang transactions na kailangan yung arm's length principle. Okay? Sige. Anyway, na-discuss na din natin tong sa number 2, pero next na lang, no? Let's proceed with next topic natin, yung articles of the OECD Model Tax Convention on Income and Capital, which are the template or the model in making tax treaties. Because what we are discussing now is about tax treaties, no? Yung Vienna Convention is only backgrounder on how these treaties are being made. No? So for the tax treaties, our template or model template is the OECD Model Tax Convention and on income and on capital. No? So it states there the Article 1 on the persons covered. No? So sino yung persons covered sa tax treaties natin? Of course, yung sabi natin, the tax treaties are between two countries. No? So sino yung mga persons covered? Who are residents of one or both of the contracting states. So if you want to avail of the tax treaty, halimbawa, tax treaty between the US and the Philippines. Although, gagawa tayo ng mga video on how to avail of the US tax treaties, especially dito sa mga creators natin, no? Especially those who are earning income from Google AdSense, no? Let's have a video on that para baka may idea sila on how to avail. Kasi ako, nag-avail pa ako ng exemption, no? So, wala akong withholding kasi hindi naman abot ng $10,000 yung income. No? So, we will discuss that in one of our videos. So, if you are a resident of one or both of the contracting states, then you can avail of the tax treaty. So, kung halimbawa, Google AdSense yan, US, so, Filipino citizen ka, so you are a resident of the Philippines. So, ano yung gagamitin mong treaty o i-applyan mo? The treaty between the Philippines and the US. No? Article 2 of the Model Tax Convention prescribe or provides what are the taxes covered. No? So, what are the taxes covered? The convention apply to taxes on income and on capital imposed. No? So, tingnan ninyo ha, income and on capital imposed. On behalf of a contracting state or of its political subdivision or local authorities, irrespective of the manner in which they are levied. So, ano yung mga walang taxes dito? If you try to look at the National Internal Revenue Code natin, meron dyan 7 taxes. Ano lang nakalagay dito sa tax treaty? Income lang. No? Kasi bakit anong sabi natin? The most important kind of taxes, of tax, is income tax. Why? 50 to 60% is the contribution of income tax in our collection. No? So even in the world, very important din ang income. Why? Kasi Sa VAT, ang laki ng exemption, 3 million. Sa income, may earning exemption. Pero almost all income na classified as income, defined as income, halos lahat yan subject to income tax. No? May mga exemption man sa income tax, pero not so much. So, ano yung taxes na nag-apply itong tax treaty natin? On income. No? Income and on capital. Ano yung magiging tax mo sa capital? Siyempre, interest, the use of money. No? Or, ano pa? Dividend. Kasi kung yung capital mo, ginamit mo to acquire shares of stocks or ownership in a certain company, then anong babalik sa iyo? Dividend. No? So, your income is in the form of dividend. There shall be regarded as taxes on income and on capital all taxes imposed on total income, on total capital, or on elements of income or of capital, including taxes on gains from the alienation of movable or immovable property. When we say alienation of movable or immovable property, meaning binenta natin, inalienate natin, hindi na, wala na sa atin yung ownership, no? Taxes on the total amounts of wages or salaries paid by enterprises as well as taxes on capital appreciation. So lahat-lahat yan, income tax yan. The existing taxes to which the convention shall apply are in particular in State A and in State B. So sa actual na tax treaty, nakalagay na yan doon. Agreed by the two countries. So sa State A, ano ba yung existing taxes na covered, no? And also in the other state. So the convention shall apply also to any identical or substantially similar taxes that are imposed after the date of the signature of the convention in addition to or in place of the existing taxes. The competent authorities of the contracting state shall notify each other of any significant changes that have been made in their taxation laws. Just like in the Philippines, di ba nagbago tayo ng taxes, but not on the train law. Kasi ang changes natin sa train law, excise taxes lang, estate tax, sa create law, no? So, we have to inform our treaty partners. Why? Kasi nagbago tayo ng tax rates on income tax, no? Corporate at sa as a individual pala doon sa train law, no? So, pagka ganyan na may changes yung domestic law ng isang bansa ng member or party to a treaty, dapat inform niya yung kanyang treaty partner, no? Since we have 43 countries nga as treaty partners natin, dapat nung nagkaroon ng changes under the train law, under the create law, we inform our treaty partners. Okay. So, next, Article 3 is the general definitions. Kanina, doon sa Vienna Convention, may mga definitions din sila. So, pagdating po sa model OECD Tax Convention, mayroon din silang definitions, no? So, person includes individual, company, and any other body of persons. So, when you try to visit also the corporation code, ganun din ang sinasabi, no? Or the tax code natin, ganun din ang sinasabi on the definition of person. So, pag sinabi mong person, individual siya and company, and any other body of persons. Kaya nga, ang definition ng person can be juridical, no? Individual or juridical person. So, itong company is a juridical person or artificial person. Company means any body corporate or any entity that is treated as a body corporate for tax purposes. So, pag sinabi mong company, kasi ang general professional partnerships are also taxed as corporation, di ba? At saka yung joint venture, taxed din sila as corporation. So, term enterprise applies to the carrying on of any business. Pag sinabi mo enterprise, you carry on any business, no? Yan ang enterprise. O kaya ang word na enterprising, you are very enterprising. Ibig sabihin, talagang may business acumen ka. No? So, enterprise of contracting state, enterprise of other contracting state means enterprise carried on by resident of contracting state and an enterprise carried on by resident of the other contracting state. No? Kasi ang pinag-uusapan dito yung taxability na ha. So, pag sinabi mo enterprise, they are carrying on a business. The other contracting state and the other contracting state. That's why very important po sa transfer pricing and also on international taxation, itong mga tax treaties natin, and also the definition of permanent establishment or the classification of an enterprise, whether nagiging permanent establishment ba siya o hindi. Why? Because that will determine the taxability. Pag sinabi mong permanent establishment ka na because na-comply mo na or nandoon ka na doon sa mga requirements to make a permanent establishment, then you will be now subject to tax. So term international traffic means any transport by a ship or aircraft operated by enterprise. Dito makikita natin dito sa mga articles nitong OECD Model Convention mamaya yung mga rate on or how this international mga ship or aircraft are being taxed, no? By of course applying for the tax treaty benefits, no? Okay. So international traffic means any transport by a ship or aircraft operated by enterprise that has its place of effective management. So very, very important po yung sinatawag nilang place of effective management. Pag sinabi mong place of effective management, nasaan yan usually? Sa head office, no? So in a contracting state, except when the ship or aircraft is operated solely between places in the other contracting state, no? So, usually, saan yung effective management? Saan nakaregister yung ship? No? Kasi alangan naman na nakaregister siya dito sa Manila. Tapos yung effective management niya nandun sa UK. No? Parang hindi match doon sa actual na situation. Okay. So the term competent authority means in state A or state B. Halimbawa, competent authority natin dito sa Pilipinas for tax purposes, then the Bureau of Internal Revenue. No? Or, halimbawa naman sa treaty lang, Republic of the Philippines. No? Terms national in relation to a contracting state means any individual possessing the nationality or citizenship of that contracting state. No? So, siya yung individual citizen ng isang bansa. Or any legal person, partnership, or association deriving its status as such from the laws in force in the contracting state. O siya yung legal person. Term business includes performance of professional services and of other activities of an independent character. So, siguro, yung bukas natin na seminar, no, sa about international taxation, mini-visit na namin yung economics, no? Kasi international taxation and then yung mga impact niya, yung tax incidents niya, no? So kasama natin yan na i-discuss. So business includes performance of professional services and of other activities of an independent character. And tingnan nyo ha, why the government is very much concerned about business. Why? Because ang business kasi, ito yung nag-generate ng income. No? So yung mga employment, ano lang naman yan, fixed lang yan ng mga salaries. Pero sino talaga ang nakapag-generate ng malalaking income? The business. Why? Kasi gumagawa yan ng economic activity in order to produce goods for the consumption of the people. So, based on that, nagkakaroon siya ng income. And that income, may share ang government dyan. No? Kaya, why is it that the government is very particular on the income of the taxpayers? Because may share siya. Doon siya kumukuha ng kanyang blood, no? Life blood, which are the taxes. Kaya kung walang business, saan mangungulekta ng tax? No? Okay. So, as regards application of convention, anytime by contracting state, any term not defined, shall, unless the context otherwise requires, have the meaning that it has at the time under the law of the state for the purposes of the taxes to which the convention applies. So, hindi naman ibig sabihin na very vague yung words. Hindi mo na makuha yung meaning. Yung common meaning niya as used in the state or prevailing, no, over the meaning given to the term under other laws of that state. Okay. So for Article 4, we have the resident, no? So sino ang ibig sabihin ng resident? Why very important yung determination ng resident? Because pag resident ka, yung taxability mo by your country, in and out, no? Whether nandito ka sa Pilipinas or nandun ka sa labas, lahat yan, taxable yan pag resident ka, no? So resident of contracting state means any person who under the laws of the state is liable to tax therein by reason of his domicile, residence, place of management, or any other criterion of a similar nature. So yan ang resident, no? Include state and any political subdivision or local authority thereof, no? Pero hindi kasama if the person liable to tax in that state in respect only of income from sources in that state or capital situated therein. Pag hindi ka kasi resident of that state, kung ano lang yung income mo on that state, yun lang babayaran mo dyan. No? And then, by reason of provisions of paragraph 1, individual is a resident of both contracting states. No? So, then his status shall be determined as follows. Pagka there are cases na ang hirap i-determine kung ano yung residence ng isang individual, no? So, anong consensus ng OECD? So, ito yung sinasabi nila. He shall be deemed to be a resident only of the state in which he has a permanent home available to him. No? So, kung meron daw siyang permanent home available to him, deemed resident siya of that state. No? Pero kung marami kang permanent home, hindi lang isang state, no? If he has a permanent home available to him in both states, he shall be deemed to be a resident only of the state with which his personal and economic relations are closer, no? So, ibig sabihin, doon siya sa center of vital interest. Kasi baka naman sa ibang bansa, may bahay nga siya, pero bakasyonan lang. Pero yung talagang tinitirhan niya na bahay, iba, no? Okay. If the state in which he has in the center of vital interest cannot be determined, no? So, hindi mo makita yung vital interest niya. Kasi bakit? Yung state na yan, pag nandyan yung vital interest niya, so consider siya as resident of that state, yung income ng resident na yan, within and without, Pilipinas yan, within and without the Philippines are already taxable. No? Kaya very much interested yung state to determine the residence of the citizen. No? If he has not a permanent home available to him in either state, wala siyang permanent home, he shall be deemed to be a resident only of the state in which he has an habitual abode. Doon siya palagi, no? Habitual. If he has an habitual abode in both states, lahat naman may habitual abode siya, no? Or in either of them, he shall be deemed to be a resident only of the state of which he is a national, no? Halimbawa, national ka ng Pilipinas, no? So, dito ka, resident ka talaga dito. If he is a national of both states naman, national siya. Or of neither of them, the competent authorities of the contracting state shall settle the question by mutual agreement. So, yung contracting state, mag-agree na lang sila kung ano yung gagawin nila. Kung baga sa ano, since hindi nila talaga ma-determine kung saan yung residence ng taxpayer, then anong gagawin nila? Mutual agreement na lang mag-usap-usap. Okay. So, whereby reason of the provision of paragraph 1, a person other than individual is a resident of both contracting state, then it shall be deemed to be resident only of the state which its place of effective management is situated. Kaya mamaya tingnan ninyo kung saan itatax yung mga ship, mga yung sa vessels, no, yung mga flight, dun sa kanilang place of effective management, no? At saan yung effective management, place of effective management? Kasi yung mga multinational companies or transnational companies has presence in almost every countries of the world, no? So, nasaan yung effective management niya? Okay, itong Article 5, the permanent establishment, we have discussed this already when we discuss yung transfer pricing and permanent establishment. No? So, hindi na po natin to ibalikan, but this is part of the OECD Model Tax Convention on Income and Capital. No? Itong Article 5. Why very important ang permanent establishment? Because the moment the country determines that you have a permanent establishment sa bansa nila, then you will be subject now to tax. No? Yung permanent establishment. Yung mga regular na tax. Kasi yun namamape sa registered enterprises, although permanent establishment sila, kung nag-avail naman sila ng preferential rate, then pwede mas lower yung kanilang taxes. No? Okay. Hindi natin na-elaborate yung permanent establishment. Kasi we have discussed that. Okay. Okay. Next na tayo sa Article 6. No? Skip natin yung Article 5, permanent establishment. Let's now go to income from immovable property. Ano ba tong income from immovable property? Pag sinabi mong immovable, ano yan? No? So, income derived by resident of a contracting state from immovable property, including income from agriculture or forestry, situated in the other contracting state, may be taxed in that other state. So, saan itatax yung income? Halimbawa, sabi na dito yung immovable property is, halimbawa, agriculture, no? Immovable. Meron ka halimbawa na rice field. Movable ba yung rice field? Pwede mo bang ilipat-lipat yan? Of course not. Yung lease mo ng building, no? Nagpaparenta ka. Movable ba yan? Pwede mo bang i-move yung building mo na kahit saan dadalhin mo? Of course not, no? Or forestry. Oh, pwede mo bang ilipat yung forest? Hindi. Pwede mong ilipat yung isang kahoy na putulin mo. Pero yung buong forest ilipat mo, hindi pwede, no? So, pagka ganyan, saan daw siya itatax? May be taxed in that other state. Remember the word may be. So, meaning, it will depend also on the domestic legislation of the contracting state or the country. Why? Kasi pag sinabi mong maybe, then optional lang yan. Pwedeng hindi, pwedeng may tax, no? So, maybe tax in that other state. Okay. Immovable property, no, ibig sabihin ng immovable property. Very important po ito ang immovable property kasi saan mo ito makita? Sa balance sheet mo, no? At saka this is property recorded in your financial statement. Okay, so ang immovable property, the same meaning under the law of the contracting state, no? In which the property in question is situated. The term shall in any case include property accessory of immovable property, livestock and equipment used in agriculture and forestry, rights to which the provision of general law respecting landed property apply, use of rank of immovable property and rights to variable or fixed payments as consideration for the working of or the right to work, mineral deposits, sources, and other natural resources, ships, boats, and aircraft shall not be regarded as immovable property. No? So ano lang yung regarded na immovable property? Right to work, mineral deposits, sources, other natural resources. Pero, pagdating na sa ship, boats, aircraft, hindi sila regarded as immovable property. Why? Kasi movable property sila eh. No? Nagta-transfer sila ng one place to another. No? So, yun yung ships, boats, and aircraft. Okay. So, provisions of paragraph 1 shall apply to income derived from direct use, letting, or use in any other form of immovable property. So, yun yung paragraph 1. No? Provision of paragraph 1 and 3 shall also apply to the income from immovable property of an enterprise. Okay. Let's go to Article 7 on the business profits. Alam niyo yung business profits, ang daming nakakunik dito sa permanent establishment under Article 5. No? So, where will you tax the business profits? Excuse me. Let's go to Article 7 on the business profits. Ang daming nakakunik. Ilan yung viewers natin, Hari?
64.
64. So, shout out po sa mga viewers natin. Diyan lang kayo. Thank you very much for watching. So, let's continue with our Article 7 na business profits. So, business profits, ano yung business profits? Ano yung ibig sabihin ng business profits? That's why sa transfer pricing, very important ang anong tinatawag dito? Yung profits, no? Kasi pag sinabi mong profits, you're in business. Otherwise, kung wala kang profits, you're not in business. Halimbawa, net loss ka na lang palagi, then you're not in business. That's why, even loss-making activities, pagka gumawa ng transfer pricing analysis, they are also included, no? Kasi, anong sabi ng OECD? It might be that they are not really losing, no? Kaya lang sila nagre-report ng loss because of charging some income and expenses siguro, pero in reality, they are not losing. Ano pala in reality? They are just doing services to another party, the related party nila. Oh? So, in Article 7, business profits, profits of an enterprise of contracting state shall be taxable only in that state. No? So, si enterprise, nasa contracting state siya, taxable only in that state yung kanyang profits. No? Unless the enterprise carries on business and the other contracting state through a permanent establishment situated therein. Kaya tingnan nyo ang mga unless nandyan palagi sa permanent establishment. No? Kaya nga sabi ko yung permanent establishment, ginawa na lang din to na complicated structure eh. No? If the enterprise carries on business as foresaid, the profits that are attributable to the permanent establishment in accordance with provision of paragraph 2 may be taxed in that other state. No? Sino yung other state? Yung source state, no? Kasi yung resident state, yan na yung state mo talaga eh. Okay. Ito na. For purposes of this article and Article 23A at saka 23B, ano yung sinasabi dito? Article na ano, sa Model OECD Tax Convention. No? So, anong sabi dito? The profits that are attributable in its contracting state to the permanent establishment referred to in paragraph 1 are the profits it might be expected to make, in particular in dealings with other parts of the enterprise. No? If it were a separate and independent enterprise engaged in the same or similar activities under the same or similar conditions, taking into account the functions performed, assets used, and risk assumed by the enterprise through the permanent establishment and through the other parts of the enterprise. Tingnan nyo ang application ng transfer pricing sa mga companies, no, availing of the treaties. Kasi, pag pinagsama mo yung transfer pricing, pinagsama mo yung tax treaties, ang ginagawa ng iba, while they wanted to establish brands or subsidiaries in any countries, unang tinitingnan nila are the tax treaties, no? Halimbawa, sige, maglagay tayo ng factory sa China na doon. Is there yung nakakatulong na tax treaty sa Pilipinas pag nandoon tayo, no? O kaya sa China, no? Kung nasaan ka. Bakit? Kasi anong sabi dito? Taking into account the functions performed, assets used, and risk assumed by the enterprise through the permanent establishment and through the other parts of the enterprise, no? So, functions performed, nasa comparability analysis natin yan sa transfer pricing. Also, the assets used and risk assumed. Ito yung second factor natin sa comparability analysis. Ano ba yung 5 factors in comparability analysis natin? We have the nature and characteristics of the goods and services, whether tangible or intangible. No? We have itong sinasabi dito, the functions, assets, and risk. No? And then we have the economic conditions, the contractual terms, and the business strategies. No? Sila yung nag-comprise ng comparability analysis natin. Why? Because comparability analysis is the heart of transfer pricing. No? Okay. So, wag kang mag-compare, wag kang gumawa ng comparability analysis. Walang transfer pricing. No? Okay. So, in accordance with paragraph 2, the profits attributable to permanent establishment of the enterprise of the contracting states and taxes, accordingly, profits of the enterprise that have been charged to tax in the other state. So, the other state shall, to the extent necessary to eliminate double taxation of these profits, make an appropriate adjustment to the amount of the tax charged on those profits. No? So, in determining such adjustment, the competent authorities of the contracting state shall necessarily consult each other. No? So, ito yung arbitration. Anyway, mamaya dyan sa part natin, may mga sinasabi na sila na arbitration. No? So, where profits include items of income which are dealt with separately in other articles of this convention, then the provision of those articles shall not be affected by the provisions of this article. Okay. Titingnan ko yung oras na mabilis na lang. So for the Article 8, shipping, inland waterways, transport, and air transport. Paano sila tinatax dito sa Pilipinas? Shall be taxable only in the contracting state in which the place of effective management of the enterprise is situated. No? So, taxable lang siya doon sa contracting state kung nasaan yung effective management. No? So, nasaan ba palagi yung effective management? Kasama yan nung may-ari, no? Yun yung effective management. Profits from operation of boats engaged in inland water-based transport, no? Shall be taxable only in the contracting state in which the place of effective management of the enterprise is situated. So, take note ha, na yung sinasabi na place of effective management. No? Although palipat-lipat yan, but kung saan yung designated na effective management ng company. No? So if the place of effective management of shipping enterprise or inland waterways transport enterprise is aboard a ship or boat. So ang effective management niya, halimbawa, nandun sa ship or boat, no? Tingnan mo na lang ha, yung effective management niya kasama dun sa boat, no? Then it shall be deemed to be situated in the contracting state in which the home harbor, no? So nasaan yung home harbor niya? Of the ship or boat is situated. If there is no such home harbor in the contracting state of which the operator of the ship or boat is resident, no? So, hirap ka tuntunin yung effective management. Then, ano sabi? Operator of the ship or boat is the resident. Kung nasaan siya, yun ang resident ng ship or boat, no? So provisions of paragraph 1 apply to profits from participation in a pool, a joint business, or an international operating agency. So take note, sa transfer pricing guidelines natin, we have yung kasama sa guidelines natin yung mga intra-group services cost contribution arrangement. No? Kasama yan. Kasi yung related parties na talagang silang hinahabol ng transfer pricing in order to adopt the arm's length principle. Sama-sama yan sila. So there are participation in a pool, no? They are pooling their interest, no? Or a joint business or an international operating agency. Okay. So next is the associated enterprises. Anong ibig sabihin mo ng associated enterprises? No? Enterprise contracting state participates directly or indirectly in the management, control, or capital of an enterprise of the other contracting state. So pagka ganyan, ano sila? Associated sila. Associated meaning related. No? So same person participate directly. So ito yung mga related parties. Or indirectly in the management, control, or capital of an enterprise of the contracting state. Kaya tingnan nyo, parang music lang din to. Kung ano yun nasa tax treaties, no? Yun din ang kailangan pagdating mo sa transfer pricing study. Kaya interrelated lang sila. So, sa tax treaty pa to na provision. Pero nandito na yung related parties or the element of control. No? So participate directly or indirectly in the management, control, or capital or enterprise of the contracting state. An enterprise of the other contracting state, and in their case, conditions are made or imposed between the two enterprises. Tingnan nyo anong provision nito? Article 8. Pero nandito din yung parang sa Article 9 din So, anong sabi niya? Between the two enterprises in their commercial or financial relations, which differ from those which would be made between independent enterprises, then any profits which would, but for those conditions, have accrued to one of the enterprises, but by reason of those conditions have not so accrued, may be included in the profits of that enterprise accordingly. No? So, ito yung arm's length principle natin. No? Kaya nga ang arm's length principle natin, pinag-aaralan natin yung tax treaties kasi dito din siya nanggagaling, no? Kasi yun yung mga arguments dati na nasaan ba yung wala tayong local laws on transfer pricing. So you have to visit also our tax treaties kasi tingnan mo sa mga tax treaties natin lahat. Nandoon din yung law on transfer pricing. Ito din yung law ng transfer pricing na sinatawag. Kasi nandito rin din yung arm's length principle. Ano yung arm's length principle niya? Ito yung benchmarking ng independent parties and ng related parties. No? At ito yung tinatawag niya, may be included in the profits of that enterprise and taxed accordingly. So ito yung basis ng transfer pricing. That's why very important yung transfer pricing and tax treaties. No? Kung baga magkarugtong lang sila ng buhay. No? So, saan ba kumukuha ang transfer pricing ng kanyang power? Dito rin sa tax treaties. No? Okay. Ito na. Yung pagdating naman sa adjustment. No? So, where the contracting state includes in the profits of an enterprise of that state. No? And taxes accordingly. Anong gagawin ng isang state? No? Sabi niya, the contracting state has been charged to tax in that other state. No? And the profits were included, which would accrue to the enterprise of the first mentioned state. Anong mangyayari? If the conditions made between the two enterprises had been those which would have been made between independent enterprises, then that other state shall make an appropriate adjustment to the amount of the tax charged therein on those profits. Kasi limbawa lang may na-audit ako, no? While I was still in the BIR. Nag-propose ako ng adjustment, although hindi ko yun natapos kasi nag-retire na ako, no? Nag-propose ako ng adjustment, how much is my adjustment? Malaki, no? So, hindi pa natapos yung assessment ko, yung accountant or yung consultant ng taxpayer, na sila na they will resort to MAP or the mutual agreement procedure. Questionin na nila. No? Why? Kasi, nag-adjust ka, halimbawa, you include the income here in the Philippines during the audit, ina-include na yan na income doon sa ibang bansa. Doon, nabayaran na rin na yung tax. So, anong sabi dito sa tax treaty? In that case, yung other state should make an appropriate adjustment. No? Kasi hindi naman dapat sa kanya income yan Dapat income yan dito sa Pilipinas, doon mo lang binayad because nagtitipid ka ng tax. No? So, anong gagawin niya? Make an appropriate adjustment to the amount of the tax charged therein on those profits. No? So, ganun siya ka powerful yung provision na to. no? Kasi dito nakasandal, ito yung legal basis ng transfer pricing, no? So, in determining such adjustment, due regard shall be had to the other provisions of this convention, and the competent authority of the contracting states shall, if necessary, consult each other. No? Paano sila mag-consult each other? To decide. But since it will take two countries to decide, napakatagal nito. No? So, anong nangyayari? Ina-assess na sila ng um, other state. Halimbawa, yung assessment is here in the Philippines. So, i-assess mo na, mapa-final na yung assessment because uh, yung examiner in charge, hindi yun papayag na hindi maging final yung assessment. Otherwise, they will be administratively liable. No? So, yun po yung nangyayari. Article 10 on dividend. No? Dividend is a mobile income. Pag sinabi nating mobile income, ano yun? Hindi yun nakapirmi sa isang lugar. Why? Kasi yung dividend is an income of the company or an individual. Pwede niyan dalhin kahit saan yan siya pupunta. No? Unlike yung tinatawag natin kanina na immovable, yung immovable, hindi yun palipat-lipat. Yung dividend pwede. No? So dividend paid by company which is resident of contracting state to a resident of the other contracting state may be taxed in that other state. So pwede. Pwede sa other state. Or halimbawa, dito sa Pilipinas, nag-declare ka ng dividend. And then yung recipient ng dividend mo is an individual found in other countries. Anong gagawin mo? Since dividend is subject to final tax, then mag-withhold ka na ng final tax. No? So, maybe tax in that other state. Pwedeng i-tax dito. Kasi, dito naman ang declaration ng dividend, dito yung source. Okay. Layo pa tayo. So, however, dividend paid by company, resident of contracting state, may be also taxed in that state according to the law of the state. So, kahit na po pinag-usapan natin dito, yung tungkol sa provisions ng tax treaties, but of course, there are domestic legislation that should also be visit, no, during the imposition. But sabi na nga natin kanina doon sa Vienna Convention, yung pacta sunt servanda na rule, ano sabi? Dapat ang treaties should be powerful kaysa sa domestic law. No? Otherwise, wala na siyang visa. No? Kung mas unahin mo pa yung domestic law mo, wala na siyang visa, especially if that treaty is in conflict with your domestic law. No? So, itong dito po sa OECD Model Convention are also our only model, no? Model template. So, makikita mo ang application nito pag inadapt na ito ng Pilipinas o at ng ibang bansa during their crafting of their tax treaties. No? So, dito, wala pa tong application kasi wala namang bansa involved dito. These are just convention. No? So, ano sabi dito about dividend? 5% of the gross amount of dividend if the beneficial owner is a company. No? Okay, which holds directly at least 25% of the capital and 15% of the gross amount of dividend in all cases. Ano tong 15% at saka 5%? Ito yung tax, no, sa dividend. Sa atin, magkano yung tax natin sa dividend? 10%, no, which is final tax. Okay. Okay, so dividends used in this article, income from shares. Kasi ang share, nag-earn niya ng dividend. Anong jusance? Enjoyment, no? Shares or jusance rights, no? Mining shares also shares of stock. Founder shares or other rights, not being debt claim. So ito yung pinagmumula ng dividend, no? Nag-invest ka sa mga shares of stocks ng mga companies, then pag kumita yung company, meron kang income, meron kang dividend, no? As opposed to loan, na yung loan is may kita o wala ang company na nangutang sa iyo, magbabayad talaga sila ng interest. Sa dividend naman, kung nag-invest ka ng shares, pag walang kita yung company, wala ka ring dividend, so wala ka ring kita. So in short, hindi fixed yung dividend, depende lang yan kung kumita yung company. Samantalang ang interest, may kita o wala ang company, magbabayad talaga sila ng interest kasi utang. Okay. So, sino yung beneficial owner ng dividend? Sa mga cases, no? So, siguro magkakaroon tayo ng mga study on that. Yung tinatawag nila na beneficial owner ng dividend, no? Kasi even if you avail of the tax treaty, no? O kaya itong mga ginagawa ng companies to avoid payment of taxes. Kaya ito nakita during the base erosion and profit shifting na study ng OECD, no? So, ano tong concept na to? Concept of the beneficial owner of the dividend, no? Halimbawa, hindi naman talaga sila entitled as beneficial owner. Iba yung beneficial owner. But because of tax minimization, makatipid ng tax, so naglagay ng isang company na siya kunwari yung owner ng dividend. And after that, nire-remit din niya doon sa talagang owner or beneficial owner. No? So, in that case, pwedeng i-disallow ng contracting state yung kanyang treaty benefits at hindi na siya pwedeng maka-avail, magiging taxable na yung citizen of that country na nag-avail ng benefits, no, ng tax treaty na hindi naman pala talaga siya yung beneficial owner. Okay. So, sabi ko nga sa inyo, very much particular ngayon ang sa international, sa taxation, very much particular talaga sila ngayon doon sa compliance, no? And substance ng transaction. Kasi kahit nasabihin mo pa na ito yung treatment mo, which is sa tingin parang tama, but it has no substance, then pwede pa rin siyang i-disallowed. No? And paying dividend is a resident through permanent establishment situated therein, and the holding in respect of which the dividends are paid is effectively connected with permanent establishment. So in that case, taxable siya as income ng permanent establishment. Okay. Sige, yung iba nating provisions, you read that, no? Yung mga highlights ko na lang sa inyo, yung mga very important kasi wala na tayong time. And then for the interest, interest is also another mobile income just like dividend, no? Yung interest, saan ba nanggagaling yung interest? From the cost of money, no? Na pinautang mo. Ito yung sinabi ko sa inyo na yung investment sa shares of stocks, kikita ka ng dividend. Pero yung loan, nag-extend ka ng loan, kikita ka ng interest, no? So, anong rule sa interest? May be taxed in that other state. May be taxed in that other state. Ibig sabihin, in that source state, kung saan siya nagpautang, kung saan niya na-earn yung interest, no? However, interest arising in contracting state may also be taxed in that state according to the laws of that state. But if the beneficial owner of the interest is a resident of the other contracting state, the taxable charge shall not exceed 10% of the gross amount of the interest. So may ceiling or may limit. The competent authorities of the contracting state shall by mutual agreement settle the mode of application of this limitation. So there is still an assignment, no, for the contracting state. Why? Because they still have to settle their mode of application on this limitation. Hindi pa siya settled dito sa convention, no? Magulo pa. Okay. So interest means from debt, income from debt claims or every kind of whatever not secured by mortgage. So interest, kita mo yan sa pautang, no? Penalty charges for late payment shall not be regarded as interest for the purpose of this article. So hindi kasama yung penalty charges. And yung mga penalty charges po ng tax, hindi rin po siya kasama na kiniklaim as operating expenses, no? Yung mga penalties, hindi yan kasama. Ano yan? Deduction yun na diretso sa written earnings. Kasama pa siya doon sa taxable income. Okay, so ano yung beneficial owner, no, of the interest? So being a resident of contracting state carries on business in other contracting state in which the interest arises through permanent establishment. So, pagka ang transaction na is done through a permanent establishment, then nagiging taxable na siya. And if the beneficial owner is different from the legal owner or kung sino talaga yung nandyan, no? So sa beneficial owner, patunayan mo lang, no, na yung recipient of the interest is not the beneficial owner, then sa transfer pricing, pwede mo na siyang i-disallow yung transaction na yun as if there is no such kind of transaction or entity. No? Okay. So, interest arising from the contracting state when the payer is a resident of that state. No? So, person paying the interest, whether resident of contracting state or not, has contracting state. Pag sinabi mo ng permanent establishment, wala na. No, taxable na siya kaagad. Okay? Why? Because interest is borne by permanent establishment. Okay. Special relationship between the payer and beneficial owner, between both of them. The amount of interest having regard to the claim for which it is paid exceeds the amount which would have been agreed. Kanina, ano sabi doon sa model template? 5% lang, no? Eh sa actual, nag-exceed siya, then yung excess is taxable, no? Pagka nag-excess siya doon sa yung sinasabi na 5% at saka 10%. Okay. Article 12, royalties. Magkasunod talaga sila, no? Dividend, interest, royalties. Itong tatlo na to. Royalties are another mobile income. Bakit mobile siya? Sumusunod din siya kung nasaan yung may-ari sa kanya. No? So, royalties arising in a contracting state and beneficially owned by resident of that other contracting state shall be taxable only in that other state. So, dun sa resident state siya taxable. No? Okay. Bakit? Kasi royalties ito eh. Ano ba? Saan ba galing ang payment ng royalties? From right to use, no? Copyrights, literary, artistic. In short, yung royalties are payment for intangibles. No? So don't forget that. Kasi minsan, may mga naging estudyante tayo na, ano ba yung royalties? Saan ba yan galing? Ma'am, ito yung royalties. Yung royalties, galing yan sa intangibles, no? Yan ang payment for the intangibles. Okay. Ano yung mga sample ng intangibles? Ito nga, yung copyright, literary, artistic, scientific work, no? Cinematographic films, patent, trademark, design, model plan, secret formula, no? So, yun. Ang bayad doon are what we call as royalties. Okay. So if the beneficial owner of the royalties, resident of the contracting state, carries on business in the other contracting state in which the royalties arise through permanent establishment. So pag sinabi mo ng may permanent establishment siya sa isang lugar, then taxable na siya. And the right or property in respect of which the royalties are paid is effectively connected with such permanent establishment. No? So, basta ang transaction pumasok na sa permanent establishment, nagiging taxable na siya. No? Okay. So, kulang tayo ng time. Article 13, capital gains may be taxed in that other state. No? So, pwede siyang i-tax sa other state ang capital gains. No? Saan ba galing itong mga capital gains? Ito yung mga result ng may mga binenta tayo, no? Alienation of immovable property. So, yun. Ang babayad mo dyan, capital gains. Why? Kailan mong bayaran? Magkaroon ka pa ng tax clearance because hindi ka magkakaroon ng tax clearance kung hindi mo bayaran yung capital gains or yung tax on the alienation of immovable property. Kaya ang tawag sa kanya, capital gains. No? And usually, capital gains po are final, no? Final tax. as opposed to the withholding tax. Okay. Ito, yung alienation naman ng ship, aircraft, operated in international traffic, boats engaged in inland waterways transport, movable property, saan naman sila taxable? Shall be taxable only in their contracting state in which the place of effective management of the enterprise is situated. No? So, saan siya itatax? Doon sa place ng effective management, no, of the enterprise. Gains derived by resident contracting state from alienation of shares deriving more than 50% of their value directly or indirectly from immovable property. So, immovable property, pag binenta mo, yun yung may capital gains. In the other contracting state may be taxed in that other state. Okay. Ito namang gains from alienation of property shall be taxable only in the contracting state on which the alienator is a resident. No? So, na-alienate niya, binenta niya. So, taxable siya on the contracting state kung saan siya resident. No? Independent personal services, deleted. Income from employment. No? Employment shall be taxable in that state unless the employment is exercised in the other contracting state. No? If the employment is to exercise, such remuneration as derived therefrom may be taxed in that other state. In that other state, halimbawa, empleyado ka, tapos nagtrabaho ka sa ibang bansa, yung salary mo doon is subject to tax on that other state. Okay. Ito naman yung remuneration derived by resident of contracting state in respect of employment exercise in the other contracting state. Anong siya taxable? Only in the first mentioned state. Doon sa kung saan siya nagtatrabaho. The recipient is present in the other state for aggregate 183 days. No? So, umabot siya na mahigit 6 months. So, magiging taxable na siya on the other state. If remuneration is paid by or on behalf of the employer who is not a resident of the other state. No? So, ano yun? Employment exercise in that contracting state. Remuneration is not borne by permanent establishment which the employer has in the other state. Okay. Ay, ito namang remuneration from employment sa aboard a ship or aircraft, no? Yung mga crew dyan, no? Sinisweldohan yan. Saan naman sila itatax? In the contracting state in which the place of effective management of the enterprise is situated. No? So, halimbawa, ang effective management niya is nandito sa Manila. So, saan mo siya ngayon babayaran ng remuneration niya? Sa Manila. No? Kaya yung mga company sa Manila, daming mga manning agencies dyan, no? Yung mga recruit ng mga sasakay sa barko. No? Okay. Director's fees. No? Saan naman itatax yung director's fees? May be taxed in that other state. No? Yung other state, yun yung source state. Doon nanggagaling yung kanyang income as directors. Entertainers and sports person may be taxed in that other state. No? So, sino yung mga entertainers, sports person? Ito yung mga television artist, radio, theater, motion picture, or musician, or sports person, no? So, saan sila itatax? In that other state, no? At titingnan natin ngayon paano yung ginagamit nila na exemption method and the reduction method. No? Halimbawa, ito, na-tax na siya sa other state. Pagdating dito sa Pilipinas, since Filipino citizen niya, itatax siya uli. So, what happened? Either i-credit niya or i-deduct. No? Sa kanyang income tax due. Okay. So, personal activities exercised by entertainer be taxed in the contracting state in which the activities of the entertainer or sports person are exercised. Nagiging taxable na sila. Article 18, pension. Pension shall be taxable only in that state. Okay. Okay. Pero sa atin karamihan yung pension are not taxable. Okay. Government service shall be taxable only in that state. No? Okay, so yun ang government service. However, salaries, wages, and other similar remuneration shall be taxable only in the other contracting state if the services are rendered in that state and the individual is a resident of that state. No? So, may reason na yung salaries and wages, doon sa kanila ibabayad. Okay. Provisions of paragraph 1 on pension and similar remuneration paid by or out of funds created by contracting state or political subdivision shall be taxable in that state. No? Ganon din yung pension and other similar remuneration shall be taxable only in the other contracting state if the individual is resident and national of that state. Okay. Article 20 yung students, no? Shall not be taxed in that state provided such payments arise from sources outside that state. So yung mga kinikita ng students, siguro mga allowance, no? For the purpose of education, training, no? For purposes of maintenance, education, or training. Okay. Other income shall be taxable only in that state. No? Okay. Capital may be taxed in that other state. No? Capital represented by ships and aircraft, taxable only in the contracting state in which the place of effective management of the enterprise is situated. So pagka ship, aircraft, kasi ano yan hindi yan permit sa isang lugar nagta-travel yan. No? So saan sila naman taxable? Sa place of effective management of the enterprise. No? And then another elements ng capital of the resident, taxable only in that state. So, ito na yung exemption model at saka yung deduction model mamaya. So, halimbawa, pinabayad mo siya in that other state. Since citizen siya of the Philippines, halimbawa ako nagtrabaho ako sa Japan, na-tax na ako doon, so uwi ako dito sa Pilipinas. Sa atin, yung mga OFW hindi din na-tax dito sa Pilipinas. Halimbawa, tinatax, no? So, tinax na ako sa Japan, pagdating dito, itatax ako ulit. Pag may treaty tayo sa Japan, yan ang i-apply, no? Ito yung sa exemption method. May be taxed in that other contracting state, the first mentioned state shall subject provisions of paragraph 2 and 3 exempt such income or capital from tax. So, nabayaran na doon sa ibang bansa, pagdating dito, exempt na siya from income or capital. No? So, yan yung exemption method para hindi magkaroon ng double taxation. No? So, yun ang purpose. Kaya ang title nito, mga tax treaties natin is double tax agreement. No? Yeah. So, resident ng contracting state derived items of income may be taxed in the other contracting state. No? Credit method, kanina exemption method, ito naman yung credit method. No? May be taxed in the other contracting state, first mentioned state shall allow deduction from tax on the income. So ito yung how the credit method works. Halimbawa, nagtrabaho ka sa US, ngayon yung income mo doon, kinolekta na ng US yung income tax mo doon. Ngayon, balik ka dito sa Pilipinas, resident ka, kukolektahin ka ulit. So anong gagawin mo? I-file mo yung income mo galing sa US And whatever tax na binayad mo, i-claim mo na siya ngayon dito as tax credit, no? Bawas na doon sa babayaran mo. So, pwede din yun. At dalawa yung remedy for the double taxation. Yun nga yung credit method and the exemption method. Okay? Non-discrimination. So, hindi pwedeng indiscrimination yung gusto mag-avail ng tax treaty. Okay. 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 Yung iba nating mga provisions, basahin nyo na. Yung mutual agreement procedure, ito yung in case of dispute, parang arbitration din lang, mag-usap-usap yung two states. No? Okay. So, halimbawa naman, hindi talaga madesisyonan sa court, no? So, anong gagawin ng um, taxpayer, no? Submit to arbitration if the person so request, no? Kaso lang, voluntary kasi ang arbitration. Pag ayaw mo, hindi ka naman pipilitin, no? Todo yung Article 26, which I also discussed bukas sa international taxation on the exchange of information. Why? Because the exchange of information is an initiative between states in order that they can collect taxes. No? So, kumbaga sa ano nagsanib puwersa din yung mga bansa sa exchange of information so that walang mawawala na tax. No? So, competent authorities of contracting states shall exchange information as is foreseeably relevant for carrying out the provision of the convention. Okay. So pagka nagamit mo na nasa arbitration kaya ka na, ano yung at saka yung case mo halimbawa nasa court na, okay. Ano yung information mo shall be disclosed only to persons or authorities, no, concerned with the assessment or collection of enforcement or prosecution. Okay. Kasi yung mga information natin, hindi yan basta-basta din i-disclose ha. Mga lalo na yung mga confidential, hindi yan basta-basta din i-disclose. No? Okay. Assistance in the collection of taxes. Ito na yung ginagawa ng mga bansa. No? Meron din silang parang teamwork in the assistance ng taxes. Okay. Okay. Mahaba pa to, pero members of diplomatic mission and consular and then territorial extension can also be done. No? And then the entry into force, makikita nyo yan sa mga tax treaty natin, halimbawa US, may nakalagay dyan sa explanation niya na yung entry to force kung kailan. Okay. So, termination po ng tax treaties, no? Okay. Pwede naman siyang i-terminate. Pero, kailan siya pwedeng i-terminate? Either contracting state may terminate the convention through diplomatic channels by giving notice of termination at least 6 months before the end of any calendar year after the year. Such event, the convention shall cease to have effect. Okay. Poll question. Yung number 2. In your opinion, the Pacta Sunt Servanda Agreement must be kept rule. Enhance the importance of treaties in promoting social relationship between countries. No? Sa opinion ninyo. So, creates respect to both treaty partners to be observed in their agreement. So, tama ba yun? Is widely accepted principle in international law. No, sa palagay nyo, no? So, opinion lang po to. Is applicable also to tax treaty partners in their cooperation to avoid double taxation. And, letter D, irrelevant, no, in making tax treaties because of the commitment of parties are already shown in their signing of the treaties. No? So, irrelevant na daw. Answer. Okay. And then, let's proceed to the RPUS Tax Treaty, no? Kulang na tayo ng time. So, the RPUS Tax Treaty, ito po yung example. No? Convention between the Government of the Republic of the Philippines and the Government of the United States of America with respect to taxes on income. Ha? Ang nakalagay dito, taxes on income lang. Kaya yung sabi ko sa inyo na yung mga taxes na nandiyan sa National Internal Revenue Code natin na 7 kind of taxes, hindi lahat yan nandito sa tax treaty, only taxes on income. Okay. So this government, this convention or agreement na to between the government ng Pilipinas at saka yung United States, kailan to na-sign no, sa Manila in October 1, 1976. Kailan siya nag-entered into force? October 16, 1982. No? So, 6 years. No? So the 30th day following the exchange of the relevant instrument of ratification in Washington, United States. Kasi di ba ang proseso sa paggawa ng treaty kanina dun sa Vienna Convention, matagal, no? May ratification pa. Okay. Kasi without that ratification, walang force and effect yung treaty mo. Okay. So, anong ginawa ng Republic of the Philippines and the government of the United States? They conclude a convention. At ano yung purpose? Avoidance of double taxation. No? And what are the taxes covered? So, nakalagay dyan na federal income tax. No? At hindi pa kasama yung improperly accumulated earning tax and personal holding company tax. Apply to taxes similar to covered in paragraph 1, yung sabi ng ating income. So, kung may mga changes, yung US at saka RP in their tax laws, they should inform the treaty partner, meaning yung US at saka RP at once, no? Once a year. Okay. So, may general definition din siya, just like the Vienna Convention. No? So, yung United States, Philippines, contracting state, person. Okay, so United States Corporation, meron din siyang definition, no? And also the competent authority. Okay. International traffic. Okay, so ito yung transport by ship or aircraft operated by resident of one of the contracting states except where such transport is confined solely to places within the contracting state. Okay. Ito yung fiscal residence, no? Ito yung kanina yung saan ba siya resident, no? So, lahat daw in a person sa corporation are resident in Philippines for purposes of Philippine tax. Okay. United States Corporation. So, consider sila as resident na United States. So, ito naman, kung paano resolve yung dispute kung walang resident ang isang tao, no? Kagaya dito kanina sa Model OECD Convention. No? And then the source of income, no? So, nandyan yung dividend. Okay. Interest, royalties, performance of labor, personal services. Okay. Pero pagka attributable na sa permanent establishment, as we learned, magiging taxable na yung permanent establishment. Okay. Okay, so these are just example of the RP-US tax treaty. No, hindi natin siya matapos because of lack of time. But please read the treaty, not only the RP-US tax treaty, but also read the other tax treaties. Although, if you try to look at halos pare-pareho lang sila, pero kung basahin mo yung bawat provisions nila, meron din pagkakaiba. Especially in the definition of permanent establishment at saka yung number of days. No? Kagaya nung sa model OECD, 12 months. Sa dito sa RPUS naman 183 days lang. Oh, so hindi pare-pareho. Okay, let's now go to the third full question. So number 3, the OECD Model Tax Convention on Income and Capital is a soft law, hence cannot be enforced between countries. No? Soft law. Wala siyang teeth. No? Letter B is only a guide when two states or countries draft their own treaties. No? So guide lang siya. Letter C, very useful for both developed and developing countries to have a model in crafting their tax treaties. No? Letter D has no utility whatsoever. So this is just an opinion. Ha? Has no utility whatsoever because the two treaty partners has to craft their own tax treaties. So walang silbi. So please answer and then yung kanilang information. No? So remember that our free webinar is about transfer pricing, and pag sabi na natin na transfer pricing, we mean the application of the arm's length principle, but when we say also transfer pricing, we mean related parties. That's why without related parties, there is no transfer pricing. No? Kasi ang transfer pricing, kung lahat independent parties na, wala nang transfer pricing. Why? Because sabi nga natin, the independent transactions are the true transactions. So, hindi na kailangan mag-benchmark or mag-compare. And the heart of the transfer pricing is comparability analysis. And how this transfer pricing and tax treaties are related, because in transfer pricing, the taxpayer are using transfer pricing as their tool in order to shift the payment of taxes, no, from the high tax jurisdiction to the low tax jurisdiction, and also they are using the tax treaty, no. So they're exploiting the tax treaty benefits in order to lower also their payment of taxes, no. So yung mga treaty abuses, at least kinukure na po yan ngayon ng OECD, no, because there are abuses in the tax treaties. Why? Paano nagkakaroon ng abuses sa tax treaties? Whereby na mag-a-avail o maglalagay ng, because of the favorable na tax treaties between the countries, no? At saka yung business niya. So, kahit hindi siya qualified, maglalagay siya ng another companies doon sa isang country na yan in order to avail of the tax treaties between the countries. And then, pag na-avail na nila yung lower na tax treaties, isi-shift na nila ngayon yung capital or yung income doon sa totoong may-ari or sa beneficial owner, no? So in that case, na-circumvent nila yung batas na kapag avail sila ng tax treaties na hindi naman dapat, no? So those are example of treaty abuses that should be avoided. No? So please submit your evaluation form and also the poll questions, and then we will proceed with the question and answer. So for your readings, no, so huwag kayong manghinayang ha, umattend na rin lang kayo ng webinar, mag-reading kayo. So for your readings, you read the Model OECD Convention on Income and Capital, and also the Vienna Convention on Law of Treaties, And then yung mga tax treaties natin with other countries, no? Mahahasa kayo. Kasi, ma'am, may employee po kami sa Malaysia, ma'am, may employee kami sa Indonesia. Ano pong gagawin namin? Consult the treaty. We have treaties with Indonesia, we have treaties with Malaysia. At ano ba yung income doon? Tingnan mo ngayon kung anong article yung magpo-fall sa kanya. No? Halimbawa, ano siya, student. So may income siya halimbawa doon. O saan siya magpo-fall? So tingnan mo yung provision on student. Halimbawa, business profits. O kaya nagbenta siya ng immovables doon, properties. Tingnan nyo sa tax treaty. Kasi hindi pwede na basta-basta ka na lang magsabi na ganito yun. At hindi applicable doon yung tax rates natin na nasa tax code. No? What will prevail is the tax treaty. Kasi anong sabi nung Pacta Sunt Servanda na rule? We have to abide or have to keep our agreement. No? Kasi nag-agree tayo sa treaty, so we have to follow. We have to keep those agreements. Okay. Tapos na?
Apo.
Sige. Let's now proceed to the question and answer po. So that yung iba na tapos na, you can go. But those who still have questions, answer po natin yung questions. Okay.
Apo, ma'am. Yung unang question, ma'am, galing kay Sir Ryan
Okay.
Deocades.
Ryan,
Deocades.
yung sa Iloilo. No? Siya yun.
Sabay, ma'am.
Oh, Iloilo. Pavia, Iloilo.
Oo nga.
Sige. Kaya alam nyo, I'm 64 years old. Hindi pa masyadong impaired yung aking yung aking pag-iisip. Kaya kanina, medyo may nasabon lang naman. Kasi nagpapa-sign kasi ako daw ang auditor. At nakaligtaan ko lang daw signan yung dokumento. Nung tinignan ko, okay lang sana sa akin kung dala-dala niya yung buong dokumento. Tapos pasignan sa akin na, ito na mismo yung isang page. Nung tinignan ko, ibang dokumento. At saka sabi ko, huwag niyo akong ginaganyan kasi may memory pa ako. At saka hindi ako yung perma ng perma na inaano ko lang. Yung para bang bulag ka lang na, perma ka lang ng perma. While signing, tinitingnan ko yan, yung mga pangalan, mga dates, mga data, no? Ano na yan, pangalawang papirma na yan sa akin na sabi ko, hindi ko to na-audit. No? Okay. Sige.
Apo. Ma'am Elsa, what is the purpose of tax treaties? Is it to eliminate the double taxation?
Actually, kung in relation to transfer pricing, hindi lang double taxation yung purpose ngayon ng tax treaty, no? Kasi if you try to look at sa kanyang mga provisions, no, sa mga articles niya, nandyan na din yung pati yung cooperation in the collection of taxes, no? So ano yung tax treaties? Cooperation between countries to collect the tax from its resident at saka yung mga taxes earned. Halimbawa sa Pilipinas, halimbawa sa US, no? Kasi nga, yung US nga ngayon, may FATCA. No? So, pero bukas na natin i-discuss yan. Ano yung FATCA ng US? Yung Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act. No? Pag ikaw ay US citizen at saka meron kang transactions with any other citizens of the world, may report yan. Kaya tayo may portal na tayo sa natin, sa tax website natin. No? May portal na tayo diyan ng FATCA. At naka-report yan diretso sa US, no? Sa IRS. So, tax treaties are not only for purposes of availing a lower tax, but also cooperation between countries. And for transfer pricing purposes, ang tax treaties are also yung tinatawag natin na base erosion and profit shifting. Ginagamit din itong tax treaties. Why? Kasi yung iba na sabi ko nga, hindi naman sila qualified doon sa tax treaties, but they avail of the tax treaties at nagkaroon na tuloy ng issue on the beneficial owner, wherein hindi naman siya yung beneficial owner ng income, but because pinaregister nila doon sa country with very low tax. So naka-avail siya ngayon ng payment of taxes at a very, very low rate. Pero hindi naman siya talaga doon. So hindi siya ang beneficial owner. So hindi lang double taxation ang rule o yung purpose ng tax treaties ngayon. Nagkaroon na ng marami pa. No? Okay, next.
Next, ma'am, galing kay ma'am Miss Cupcake.
Okay.
Lagi ko po nakikita yung beneficial owner. Dapat po ba talaga dinedeclare yan aside from incorporators?
Alam nyo, ito natutuwa ako, Miss Cupcake, ha? Because nangulit ako sa WIPO or yung World Intellectual Property Office sa Switzerland, no? And I wanted to join them in their convention noong 2016. So, talagang sobra yung deliberation para maka-join ako. So, I joined sa Shanghai, China. And then, during the plenary, believe ako sa kanila kasi, alam nyo, lahat ng feedbacks, lahat ng ano, talagang kinukuha nila eh. Kaya sabi ko, dito sa Pilipinas, sigaw ka ng sigaw, hindi ka pakinggan. Pero, dapat pala pag sumigaw ka at the proper venue, no? Talagang pipick upin nila yung sinasabi mo. Kasi sila yung parang, ano ba yun? Para sila, sabi ko na nga sa inyo, sila yung architect of change in the world, no? So sila yung proper na bigyan mo ng boses mo, ng recommendation mo, gagawin nila, no? So, ano yun? Talagang 2 days lang yun na seminar. Pero I presented the beneficial owner and the legal owner and the injustices between them, no? Kasi nakita ko yun actual. Hindi nila alam, no, na ginagawa to ng mga very, very big companies. Ano yung ginagawa nila? Na kawawa yung empleyado, ini-exploit nila. Why? Kasi meron silang mga inventions, pinapangalan sa empleyado. But the empleyado is just an employee. Hindi nila binabayaran ng royalties, no? Pero sa totoo lang, very big company siya. Sophisticated yung mga product. Nakalagay doon sa opisina nila, no? Nakita ko to kasi na-evaluate ko yung company na yun. Ang dami. No? Ang dami nilang mga inventions at nakapangalan sa empleyado. So, pagbalik sa opisina, hinanap ko yung ITR kasi ako yung sa large taxpayer, ako yung taga-review ng ng transfer pricing cases. So, hinanap ko. Pagtingin ko doon, walang royalty paid to the employee. Sabi ko, so they are just exploiting the employee. Anong rule natin on the discovery or the invention? If the employee discovered the invention in the normal course of its work as an employee, ang owner ng invention is the employer. So kung ang owner ng invention is the employer, it should be registered in the name of the employer. So sabi ko, pinaregister nila sa name of the employee. So anong ibig sabihin nito? Ang owner nito, employee. No? Pero they're exploiting it, but they're not paying the employee kasi wala royalties ako nakita. No? So anong sabi ko sa kanila? There is some injustice between the legal owner and the beneficial owner. Why? Because the beneficial owner gets all the benefits, pero yung legal owner gets nothing. No? So ang presentation ko pa sa kanila the beneficial owner gets everything, the legal owner gets nothing, no? So anong nangyari? No, talagang inano nila 'yun. Kaya makita mo ngayon kahit sa SEC, nandun na yung disclosure of the beneficial owner and the legal owner. Sabi ko talagang may action ka agad, no? Siguro dahil talaga 'yun din naman yung tinatrabaho nila and inano nila talagang nagwe-welcome sila ng suggestions. No? So, very good. So, legal owner and beneficial owner. Ang beneficial owner kasi, limbawa na lang yung ginagawa ng iba para hindi ma-subject sa graft and corruption. No? Limbawa, government employee ka, so may mga extra money ka. Para hindi ka ma-graft and corruption, yung sasakyan mo, bumili ka ng magandang sasakyan, magandang bahay. Para hindi ka makasuhan, papangalan mo yun dun sa iba. no? Sa kamag-anak. Pero, ang totoo, ang gumagamit ng sasakyan, ang nakatira doon sa bahay, ikaw. So, anong tawag sa iyo? Ikaw yung beneficial owner. Yung legal owner, hindi siya ang nakikinabang. No? Okay.
Next,
So,
ma'am,
how
galing
can
kay...
you cure that? The beneficial owner and the legal owner. Kaya nga ngayon, may disclosure na. When it comes to the owner of the share substance, you have to disclose the beneficial owner and the legal owner. And of course, sa transfer pricing, paano mo malalaman yung legal owner, the concept of the legal owner and the beneficial owner? On their actual dealing. It is manifested on their actual dealings. And even on contracts, makikita mo pa rin na yung kontrata is formality lang, pero sa actual, hindi rin sinusunod. No? Next.
Galing kay Sir Carlo Magno.
Okay.
Is the tax treaties good mechanism of tax avoidance?
Parang gano'n na rin, no? Parang gano'n na rin, no? Tax avoidance. Kasi yun na nga yung sabi na alamin mo yung batas para alam mo paano i-break yung batas na yan, no? Kasi kaya nga may mga tinatawag na yung OECD na um, yung treaty abuses, no? Na-abuse na din yung treaties. That's why ano yung binago nila na noong 2018, yung definition ng permanent establishment. Yung unang basa ko lang sa permanent establishment, di na ako sold eh. Kasi okay na sana yung 2 and 3. Eh, linigyan nila ng 4. Sabi ko, wala na. Wala nang silbi to. Kaya yun, binago nila noong 2018. Okay. Next.
Next, ma'am, galing kay Ma'am Richelle Hoson.
Okay.
We have US dollar payments to a NRF corporation
Non-resident foreign.
outside the Philippines.
Yes.
This refers to payment on our purchases of software
Okay.
licenses.
Okay.
Do we need to withhold tax on this? If yes, is the default rate 30% assuming no tax treaty?
Pag nag-default rate ka na 30% kung walang tax treaty, so mataas yan. No? So, since ako absence any proof, absence any agreement, absence any, I'm always in favor of withholding. Why? Kasi lalong-lalo na kung top 20,000 withholding agent ka, mandatory sa iyo to withhold, no? Unless you can show that there is an exemption on withholding, then do not withhold. Pero kung wala kang ipakita na exemption on withholding, then you always have to withhold. No? Okay.
Next, ma'am, galing kay Ma'am SP Salom.
Okay.
Meron po kami expatriate naka-assign po sa project namin, government project.
Okay.
Anong tax rate po ang gagamitin namin? Engineering services po kami.
Consult the tax treaty. Ano ba ang citizenship nung expatriates ninyo na yan? At saka may kontrata kayo sa kanila, tingnan nyo. No? And then mag-apply kayo ng tax treaty benefits dito sa ITAD, sa National Office, International Tax Affairs Division. No? I-attach ninyo. May mga attachment tayo under yung RR 14-2021. May mga bago na sila ngayon. At saka may mga form na rin kung anong klase yung benefits na i-apply mo. No? So kung salaries yan, kung payment dyan sa service fees, no? Mayroon din forms na appropriate that you're going to fill up. Okay, so with that, I would like to say thank you very much and let's call it a day. No? Thank you very much. No, may isa pa tayo bukas. So thank you very much. And meron po tayong live streaming din po mamaya, tax training. Our discussion will focus on how to fill up yung withholding tax form 2306, 2307, 2316, and then yung mga tax rates, no? Sa withholding natin, no? So thank you very much and see you tomorrow.